In the vast expanse of the Andromeda Cluster, a coalition of advanced alien species, known as the Stellar Concord, ruled with an iron grip. For centuries, they had dominated countless star systems, their technology so far ahead that no one dared to challenge them. The Concord's power was absolute, and their arrogance matched it. They saw themselves as the pinnacle of evolution, dismissing all other civilizations as primitive or unworthy. On the edges of their territory, rumors began to spread about a distant planet called Earth, a small blue dot orbiting a yellow star in the Milky Way galaxy. Humanity, these whispers said, was strange. They were not like most species the Concord had encountered before. Instead of developing hive minds, psychic abilities, or energy-based weapons, humans relied on something peculiar: emotion. Their decisions were driven by feelings: love, anger, fear, hope, and this baffled the coldly logical Concord leaders. To them, emotions were messy, unpredictable, and ultimately useless. When humanity's first interstellar ship, the Aurora, entered the edge of the Concord's space, the response from the aliens was laughter. Messages flooded through subspace channels, mocking the audacity of such a tiny, backward species attempting to make contact. "They sent one ship," scoffed Zinara, a high-ranking ambassador of the Valith race. Her crystalline voice echoed across diplomatic chambers filled with holographic projections of her peers. "It is almost adorable." The Aurora itself wasn't particularly impressive either. Sleek but unassuming, its design lacked the sleek curves or shimmering alloys characteristic of Concord vessels. Its propulsion system emitted faint trails of plasma, nothing compared to the dazzling light shows produced by warp drives used by the Concord fleets. Yet there it was, drifting silently into the heart of their domain, broadcasting a simple message in every known galactic language: "We come in peace, seeking understanding." To the Concord, this plea for diplomacy seemed laughable. Peace? Understanding? These concepts held little value among races who thrived on conquest and control. Still, curiosity gnawed at some corners of the Council. Why would such a fledgling civilization dare step into their territory without any visible means of defense? Surely they must know how easily they could be destroyed. As debates raged within the Concord's Grand Assembly Hall, sensors aboard the Aurora detected dozens of warships converging around it. Human Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, her hands gripping the railing as she stared out at the swirling armada surrounding her vessel. She was calm, though beads of sweat trickled down her forehead. Behind her, Lieutenant Marcus Kane monitored readings while trying to suppress his growing unease. "They're scanning us," Marcus reported, his voice steady despite the tension crackling in the air. "No hostile actions yet." Elena nodded, slowly. "Good. Let's keep it that way." Her eyes narrowed as she studied the nearest alien cruiser, a massive construct resembling a jagged shard of obsidian floating against the stars. "Patch me through to their comms again. We need to make sure they understand our intentions." But even as Eleanor prepared to broadcast another message, something unexpected happened. One of the Concord ships broke formation and approached the Aurora. A beam of energy lanced out, striking the human craft. But instead of destroying it, the beam enveloped the ship in a shimmering field. Alarms blared throughout the Aurora, and the crew braced themselves for the worst. Yet nothing happened. No explosions, no breaches, just silence. "What the hell was that?" Marcus demanded, frantically checking consoles for damage reports. Elena didn't answer immediately. Her gaze remained fixed on the alien vessel now hovering close enough to touch. Then a voice boomed through the speakers, not in words but in images and sensations flooding directly into their minds. Scenes of towering cities, endless wars and triumphant victories flashed before them, accompanied by a single overwhelming thought: "You are weak. You do not belong here." For a moment, fear gripped the bridge. But then Eleanor straightened, her jaw tightening with resolve. Turning to her crew, she said firmly, "Whatever they think of us, we're not leaving. Not until we've proven them wrong." Unbeknownst to the humans, however, the Concord observers monitoring the encounter leaned forward in fascination. Something about the humans' reaction intrigued them. Despite being outnumbered and outmatched, The tiny crew aboard the Aurora hadn't panicked or surrendered. Instead, they radiated determination, an unfamiliar quality that left the Concorde unsettled, and somewhere deep within the shadows of the Concorde's command center, a silent question began to form. Could these fragile beings truly pose a threat? Little did anyone realize, the arrival of the Aurora marked only the beginning of a story that would change the galaxy forever. The energy field surrounding the Aurora began to pulse faintly, its shimmering surface rippling like water disturbed by a breeze. Captain Elena Vasquez clenched her fists, but forced herself to remain calm. Whatever was happening, she knew panicking wouldn't help. The alien message, delivered not in words, but through invasive images and emotions, had left her crew shaken. But they weren't defeated yet. They're testing us, Elena said aloud, more to steady her own nerves than anything else. They want to see how we react. Lieutenant Marcus Kane adjusted his glasses, scanning the readouts on his console. Captain, I'm picking up fluctuations in the field. It's probing us somehow, like it's analyzing our ship's systems. And us? Eleanor asked sharply. Marcus hesitated before nodding. It feels like they're trying to get inside our heads too, not just the tech. Elena took a deep breath. She had trained for years to lead this mission, preparing for every scenario she could imagine, but nothing in her simulations had prepared her for this, a direct confrontation with beings so advanced that their very presence felt overwhelming. Still, she reminded herself of why humanity had sent them here. This wasn't just about exploration, it was about proving that even the smallest voice deserved to be heard. "All right," she said firmly. "If they want to know who we are, let's show them." With that, Elena activated the ship's communication array once again. Instead of broadcasting another plea for peace, however, she transmitted something far simpler and far more human. A melody played over the comms, soft and haunting, filling the void between the Aurora and the alien fleet. It was a piece composed centuries ago by a human musician named Beethoven, a symphony born from struggle and hope. For a moment, there was silence. Then, abruptly, the energy field dissipated, leaving the Aurora exposed once more. The alien cruiser that had approached them earlier drifted closer still, its jagged edges glinting ominously in the starlight. Suddenly, a new wave of sensory information flooded into the minds of the human crew. Not aggressive this time, but curious. Images of swirling galaxies, intricate machinery, and towering crystalline structures danced before their eyes, accompanied by a single thought. "Explain." Elena blinked, startled by the abrupt shift in tone. She glanced at Marcus, who looked equally bewildered. Somehow their act of defiance, or perhaps vulnerability, had intrigued the aliens. "They want to understand," Elena murmured. "Let's give them something real," she instructed Marcus, to send another transmission, this time containing fragments of Earth's history. Scenes of humanity's greatest achievements flickered across the subspace channel. The construction of the pyramids, the first steps on the moon, the invention of the Internet. But interspersed among these moments of triumph were darker chapters, wars, plagues, environmental disasters, all balanced against humanity's resilience and capacity to rebuild. When the transmission ended, the alien response came swiftly. Another mental barrage struck the crew, this one filled with confusion and unease. To the Concorde, humanity's story made no sense. How could such a fractured species survive? Why would they choose cooperation over domination? And most baffling of all, why did they cling so fiercely to emotions that seemed to weaken rather than strengthen them? Back on the bridge of the Aurora, tension hung thick in the air. Elena watched as the alien ships remained motionless, their intentions unclear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, one of the Concorde cruisers broke away from the formation and moved toward the human vessel. Its hull split open like petals unfolding, revealing a glowing core within. "They're extending an invitation," Marcus whispered, awestruck. "I think they want us to come aboard." Eleanor frowned. That might be the biggest risk we've taken yet. But she also knew they couldn't refuse. If humanity wanted to prove itself, if they wanted to earn respect, they had to take chances. With a nod to her crew, she ordered the preparation of a shuttlecraft. Minutes later, Elena and Marcus stepped onto the alien ship alongside two other members of the Aurora's diplomatic team. Inside, the environment was surreal. The walls shimmered with shifting patterns as if alive, and the air carried a faint hum that vibrated through their bones. As they walked deeper into the vessel, they encountered their hosts for the first time. Towering figures with translucent skin and elongated limbs regarded them with expressions impossible to decipher. One of them, the leader, judging by the intricate designs adorning its form, stepped forward. "You are fragile," it said, its voice resonating directly in their minds. "Yet you resist. Why?" Kalena swallowed hard, meeting the alien's gaze without flinching. "Because resistance is what makes us strong," she replied. "We don't have your technology, your power, or your unity. But we have something else, something you can't measure. We care about each other, about our planet, about the future. That's why we're here." The alien tilted its head, studying her intently. Around them, the other conquered representatives exchanged silent signals, their thoughts hidden behind unreadable facades. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, unexpectedly, the leader extended a limb toward Elena, its crystalline fingers brushing lightly against hers. "You intrigue us," it said finally. "Perhaps we underestimated you." As the humans stood there, surrounded by beings who only moments ago had dismissed them as insignificant, a spark of understanding began to form. The Concorde hadn't expected empathy, creativity, or courage from such a seemingly weak species. Yet here were the humans, standing tall despite their fear, refusing to back down. And though neither side realized it yet, this encounter marked the beginning of a transformation, not just for humanity but for the entire galaxy. The alien leader's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. "You intrigue us," it had said, a phrase that carried both curiosity and skepticism. For Captain Elena Vasquez and her crew, this was progress, but they knew better than to let their guard down. The Concorde might have shifted from outright hostility to cautious interest, but the underlying tension remained palpable. As the humans were escorted deeper into the alien vessel, they passed through corridors alive with light and motion. The walls seemed to pulse rhythmically, as though the ship itself was a living organism attuned to its occupants' emotions. Every step felt like walking through an uncharted wilderness, unpredictable and unnerving. Yet despite the strangeness, Elena couldn't help but marvel at the ingenuity of the Concorde's technology. It wasn't just advanced, it was alive, seamlessly blending science with something almost spiritual. Their guide, a towering Valith whose crystalline skin refracted the ambient glow, led them to a chamber unlike anything they'd seen before. The room was vast, its ceiling disappearing into darkness, while countless holographic displays floated in midair. Scenes from across the galaxy flickered within each projection, distant planets teeming with life, massive starships patrolling nebulae, and bustling cities built on asteroids. At the center of the chamber stood a circular platform, where several Concorde representatives awaited them. Elena stepped forward cautiously, flanked by Marcus and the rest of her team. One of the aliens, an Ardin, its body resembling flowing liquid metal, spoke first. Its voice resonated not only in their ears but also directly in their minds, making it impossible to ignore. "Your species is contradictory," the Ardin began, its form shifting subtly as it spoke. "You possess neither strength nor unity, yet you persist. Why?" It wasn't a question asked out of genuine curiosity. There was a challenge in its tone, as if daring the humans to justify their existence. Elena took a moment to compose herself before responding. "We persist because we adapt," she said evenly. "Because even when everything seems hopeless, we find ways to overcome. Sometimes it's through technology, sometimes through sheer willpower. But most often it's through working together. Not because we're forced to, but because we choose to." Her words elicited murmurs among the Concorde leaders. To them, the concept of choice was foreign. Their civilizations operated on logic, hierarchy, and efficiency. Individual desires were irrelevant. What mattered was the collective good. Yet here were these fragile humans, speaking of free will and cooperation, as though they were strengths rather than weaknesses. The leader of the group, the same translucent-skinned being who had touched Elena earlier, stepped closer. Its elongated fingers gestured toward one of the holograms, which zoomed in to reveal Earth. The planet glowed softly against the blackness of space, its oceans shimmering blue and green under patches of swirling clouds. This world, it is your home, it asked. Yes, Elena replied, her voice tinged with pride. And we fought hard to protect it. Fought? The alien tilted its head, clearly puzzled. Against whom? Your enemies are not visible in your transmissions. Elena hesitated. How could she explain centuries of human conflict, wars waged over land, resources ideology, to beings who likely hadn't experienced such struggles in millennia? Instead of delving into specifics, she chose a different approach. Sometimes our greatest enemy isn't someone else. It's ourselves, she admitted. We make mistakes, we hurt each other, but every time we fall, we learn, and we grow stronger. Because of it. Her honesty caught the Concorde off guard. They exchanged silent glances, their thoughts hidden behind unreadable expressions. Then, one of them, an insectoid creature with multifaceted eyes, gestured sharply, causing another hologram to appear. This one depicted a battlefield strewn with wreckage, the remnants of countless ships destroyed in some long-forgotten war. You claim growth through struggle, the insectoid said, its voice sharp and cutting. Yet look at this. Is this not the result of your growth? Destruction. Chaos. Elena followed the alien's gaze, recognizing fragments of human history displayed before her. She saw images of World War II, nuclear explosions and environmental devastation, painful memories of humanity's darker chapters laid bare for judgment. Her heart sank, but she refused to look away. That's true, she acknowledged quietly. We've made terrible mistakes, but we've also learned from them. Look closer. She pointed to newer projections that appeared alongside the old ones. International treaties signed, renewable energy projects launched, global efforts to heal the planet. We're not perfect, but we're trying. Isn't that worth something? The chamber fell silent. The Concorde representatives stared at the humans, their confusion evident. These tiny beings didn't fit into any category they understood. They weren't conquerors, nor were they passive victims. They were complicated. Marcus leaned in slightly, whispering to Elena. Do you think they're buying it? I don't know, she replied under her breath. But I think they're starting to see us differently. Just then the leader raised a hand, silencing the others. Its translucent form shimmered as it addressed the humans once more. You speak of adaptation, of learning, of choosing, it said slowly. Yet you stand here alone, without allies, without power. What makes you believe you can survive among us? Elena met its gaze squarely. Because survival isn't about power. It's about resilience, about finding strength in places others wouldn't expect. And if you give us a chance, we'll show you exactly what that means. For a moment, no one moved. Then, unexpectedly, the leader nodded. A ripple of surprise spread through the chamber as the holograms dissolved, leaving only the faint hum of the ship's core. You will be tested, the leader declared. If you prove yourselves worthy, perhaps there is a place for you here. But know this. Failure will mean annihilation. With that ominous warning, the humans were led back to their shuttle. As they returned to the Aurora, the weight of what lay ahead settled heavily on their shoulders. The Concorde's challenge was clear. They would have to demonstrate not just their intelligence, but their humanity. And if they failed, the galaxy would never hear from Earth again. Yet as Elena gazed out at the stars from the bridge of her ship, she felt a spark of determination ignite within her. Humanity had faced impossible odds before, and triumphed. This time would be no different. The Aurora drifted silently in the shadow of the Concorde's colossal flagship, its crew tense but resolute. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, staring at the holographic display that now dominated the central console. The Concorde had issued their test, a challenge unlike anything humanity had ever faced. To prove their worth, the humans would need to navigate a labyrinthine simulation designed by the aliens themselves. Failure meant destruction. Success might grant them a chance to coexist. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Marcus asked, his fingers flying over the controls as he analyzed the data streaming in from the Concorde. His voice betrayed both awe and apprehension. "This isn't just some puzzle. It's like they've created an entire artificial galaxy." Eleanor nodded grimly. "They're testing more than our ability to solve problems. They're testing how we think, how we react under pressure, and whether we can adapt when everything goes sideways." The simulation was vast, encompassing dozens of star systems, each teeming with challenges tailored to expose humanity's weaknesses. Some sectors were filled with hostile drones programmed to attack on sight, while others contained environmental hazards, collapsing stars, toxic atmospheres, or fields of debris that could tear through even the strongest hulls. But the most daunting aspect wasn't the physical obstacles. It was the psychological toll. The Concorde had woven scenarios into the simulation designed to prey on fear, doubt, and division. "They're trying to break us," Elena murmured, her jaw tightening. "Not just physically, but mentally." Marcus glanced at her, concern etched across his face. "Do you think they'll succeed?" "They won't," she replied firmly, "because we're not alone, we've got each other." With those words, Elena activated the ship-wide comms. Her voice echoed through every corridor of the Aurora, steady and unwavering. "Listen up, everyone. This is it. The moment we prove what humanity is made of. The Concorde doesn't understand us yet, but they will. They'll see that we don't give up, no matter how hard things get. And if we work together, there's nothing we can't overcome." Her speech ignited a spark among the crew. For weeks they'd been isolated, underestimated, and mocked by the Concorde. Now they had a chance to show what they were truly capable of. Engineers, navigators, scientists, all of them rallied behind Elena's leadership, determined to rise to the occasion. The first leg of the simulation began without warning. The Aurora was pulled into a dense asteroid field, its sensors overwhelmed by the sheer number of collisions occurring around them. Rocks tumbled chaotically, slamming into one another with explosive force. Any wrong move would result in catastrophic damage. "Shields at maximum," Marcus shouted, his hands dancing over the controls. "But they won't hold forever." Elena gripped the railing, her eyes scanning the chaos outside. She turned to Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the ship's chief engineer. "Sarah, I need options. Now." Sarah hesitated for only a fraction of a second before responding. "We can reroute power from non-essential systems to reinforce the shields. Temporarily. But we'll lose life support in sections 3 and 4. "Do it," Elena ordered without hesitation, "and evacuate those sections immediately." As the crew scrambled to carry out her commands, Elena focused on navigating the treacherous field. With precision born of years of training, she guided the Aurora through narrow gaps between asteroids, narrowly avoiding collisions that would have spelled disaster. Every decision mattered, every second counted. When they finally emerged on the other side, battered but intact, cheers erupted throughout the ship. Yet Elena knew this was only the beginning. The Concorde's next challenge awaited, and it promised to be far more insidious. Hours later, the Aurora entered a sector where time itself seemed distorted. Clocks aboard the ship ticked erratically, sometimes slowing to a crawl, other times racing forward unpredictably. Crew members reported strange sensations, moments of déjà vu, fragmented memories surfacing unbidden, and an overwhelming sense of disorientation. "It's messing with our perception of reality," Marcus said grimly, clutching his head as if trying to hold on to clarity. "If we can't trust our own senses, how are we supposed to function?" Eleanor felt it too, the creeping unease, the nagging feeling that something was fundamentally wrong, but she refused to let it consume her. Instead, she gathered her team in the briefing room, determined to confront the issue head-on. "We're stronger than this," she told them, her voice firm despite the growing tension in the air. "Whatever they're throwing at us, we'll find a way through. Together." One by one, the crew shared their experiences, piecing together patterns amidst the confusion. Slowly, they realized the key to overcoming the distortion: teamwork. By relying on one another rather than individual instincts, they could counteract the effects of the warped environment. As they worked together to recalibrate the ship's systems and stabilize their mental states, something remarkable happened. The aliens monitoring the simulation watched in stunned silence as the humans adapted, not just to the physical challenges, but to the psychological ones as well. Where the Concorde expected discord and panic, they found unity and resilience. In the end, it wasn't brute force or superior technology that allowed the Aurora to survive. It was humanity's capacity for empathy, creativity, and collaboration. When the final stage of the simulation ended, the Concorde leaders convened in their council chamber, their expressions unreadable but tinged with something new: respect. They endured, the translucent leader said quietly, its voice tinged with disbelief. Against all odds, they endured. For the first time, the Concorde began to question their assumptions about humanity. These fragile beings weren't just survivors, they were innovators, dreamers, fighters. Perhaps, just perhaps, they deserved a place in the galaxy after all. Back aboard the Aurora, Elena allowed herself a brief moment of relief. They had passed the test, but she knew the real battle was far from over. Still, one thing was certain: the Concorde would never look at humanity the same way again. The Aurora emerged from the simulation battered but unbroken, its crew weary but triumphant. Yet the sense of victory was fleeting. As Captain Elena Vasquez and her team gathered on the bridge to assess their situation, a new transmission arrived from the Concorde. It wasn't congratulatory. Instead, it carried an ominous tone that sent chills down everyone's spines. "You have completed the trial," the voice of the translucent leader echoed in their minds, cold and measured. "But this is not the end. Your survival has proven you are resilient, but resilience alone does not guarantee coexistence. You must now face the ultimate test." Elena exchanged a glance with Marcus Kane, who was already analyzing the incoming data. The screen before them flickered to life, displaying a map of the simulated galaxy they had just navigated. At its center lay a massive structure, a sprawling construct resembling a fortress suspended in space. Its design was alien, yet familiar, as if it had been pieced together from fragments of countless civilizations. "What is that?" Elena asked aloud, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. "The Nexus," one of the Concorde representatives replied through the comms. Their mental voice carried both awe and dread. "It is the heart of our domain, a place where all knowledge, power, and decisions converge. To prove your worth, you must enter it." "And what happens if we fail?" Marcus interjected, his brow furrowed. "Then you will be erased," came the reply, blunt and final. "Not only your ship, but all memory of your species will vanish from existence." The weight of those words settled heavily over the crew. Erasure, an unthinkable fate for any civilization. But Elena refused to let despair take hold. Instead, she focused on the challenge ahead, determined to find a way forward. "We've faced impossible odds before," she said firmly, addressing her team. "We'll do it again. Whatever this Nexus is, whatever lies inside, we'll figure it out together." As the Aurora approached the Nexus, its sheer scale became overwhelming. The structure loomed larger than anything humanity had ever encountered, its surface bristling with glowing conduits and shifting patterns that seemed almost alive. When the ship docked, a corridor extended outward, connecting them to the alien construct. "This feels wrong," muttered Lieutenant Sarah Chen as the boarding party prepared to disembark. She adjusted her helmet nervously, her eyes darting around the dimly lit passageway. "Like it's watching us." "It probably is," Marcus said grimly. He held up a handheld scanner, which emitted erratic readings. "These energy signatures are off the charts. I've never seen anything like them." Elena led the group cautiously into the depths of the Nexus, her pulse racing with every step. The interior was unlike anything they could have imagined. Walls shifted and reformed constantly, creating labyrinthine pathways that defied logic. Holographic projections floated in mid-air, depicting scenes of war, peace, creation, and destruction, snapshots of the Concorde's history intertwined with fragments of humanity's past. "They're testing us again," Elena realized aloud. "But this time it's not just about survival. They want to see how we react when confronted with everything." Her words proved prophetic. As they ventured deeper, the corridors began to reflect their innermost fears and doubts. For Marcus, It was visions of failure, calculations gone wrong, systems collapsing under his watch. For Sarah, it was the faces of loved ones left behind, on Earth, accusing her of abandoning them. Even Elena wasn't immune. She saw herself standing alone on the bridge of the Aurora, her crew dead, her mission failed. Yet each member of the team fought back against these illusions, drawing strength from one another. When Marcus faltered, Sarah reminded him of his brilliance and dedication. When Sarah broke down, Marcus reassured her that her sacrifices mattered. And when Eleanor doubted herself, her crew rallied around her, reminding her why they trusted her. To lead, their bond became their anchor, grounding them amidst the chaos. Slowly they pushed onward, refusing to let the Nexus break them. Finally they reached the core chamber, a vast, cavernous space dominated by a pulsating orb of light suspended above a circular platform. Around it stood several Concord leaders, their forms shimmering faintly in the glow. The translucent leader stepped forward, its expression unreadable. "You have come far," it said, its voice resonating through the chamber. "But the final challenge remains. To prove yourselves worthy, you must confront the truth of your species and decide whether to embrace it or reject it." Before anyone could respond, the orb flared brightly, flooding the room with images and sensations. Humanity's darkest moments unfolded before them. Wars waged over greed and hatred, ecosystems destroyed by neglect, lives lost to ignorance and cruelty. Each scene was accompanied by a wave of despair so intense it threatened to overwhelm them. But then something changed. The orb shifted, revealing contrasting images of hope and triumph. Humans working together to heal their planet, risking their lives to save strangers, reaching out across cultures and borders to build bridges. These moments were fewer, perhaps, but no less powerful. The message was clear. Humanity was flawed, capable of both great evil and great good. The choice lay with them, whether to succumb to their darker impulses or strive for something better. Elena took a deep breath, stepping closer to the orb. Her voice rang out strong and unwavering. "We're not perfect. We make mistakes, we hurt each other, we destroy. But we also learn, we grow, we heal. That's who we are. Not one or the other, but both. And that's why we deserve a chance." For a moment, there was silence. Then the orb dimmed, and the Concord leaders exchanged glances filled with uncertainty and something else. Respect. "You have shown courage," the leader said finally, "and wisdom beyond what we expected. Perhaps there is more to your species than we understood." Outside the Nexus, the Aurora's crew waited anxiously, unaware of what was happening inside. But aboard the ship, a quiet resolve spread. Whatever came next, they knew they had faced the hardest truths about themselves and emerged stronger for it. The core chamber of the Nexus was silent, save for the faint hum of the glowing orb above. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at its center, her words still hanging in the air like ripples across water. She had laid bare humanity's flaws and strengths, unafraid to confront the truth about her species and herself. Around her, the Concord leaders remained motionless, their crystalline forms shimmering faintly as they processed what she had said. For a moment, it felt as though time itself had frozen. Then, without warning, the orb flared once more, bathing the room in an intense light that forced everyone to shield their eyes. When the brightness faded, the scene before them shifted dramatically. Instead of abstract projections or fragmented memories, the orb now displayed Earth, its vast oceans, sprawling continents, and vibrant cities teeming with life. But this wasn't just any depiction of the planet. It was alive, pulsating with energy, as if the very essence of humanity had been captured within it. "This is your world," the translucent leader said, its voice reverberating through the chamber. "Tell us why it matters." Elena hesitated only briefly before stepping forward, her gaze locked onto the image of Earth, and for the first time since arriving in the Nexus, she allowed herself to feel, not fear, but love. Love for the fragile. Blue sphere suspended in the void, for the billions of lives it nurtured, and for the boundless potential it represented. It matters Because it's ours, she began softly, her voice growing stronger with each word. Not because we own it, but because we belong to it. Every mountain, every river, every breath of air, it connects us. It reminds us that no matter how far we travel, we carry our home with us. And when we look up at the stars, we don't see emptiness. We see possibility, a chance to learn, to grow, to share. She paused, glancing back at her crew. Their faces were etched with exhaustion, but also determination. They had endured so much together, and now standing here in this alien construct, they were ready to take one final stand. But Earth isn't perfect, Elena continued, turning back to the Concorde. We've made mistakes, terrible ones. We've hurt each other, exploited our resources, and ignored the consequences of our actions. But here's the thing, we're trying to fix it, not because someone forced us, not because it's easy, but because it's the right thing to do. Because deep down we know we're capable of better. Her words resonated deeply, not just with her crew but with the aliens watching silently. For beings who valued logic and efficiency above all else, the concept of striving for something greater purely out of moral conviction was foreign and profoundly moving. The insectoid representative tilted its multifaceted head, its sharp voice cutting through the silence. You speak of morality as if it is strength, yet it has cost you dearly. Your wars, your divisions, they stem from these ideals you cling to. Yes, Elena admitted, nodding firmly. And so does our progress, our ability to dream, to hope, to care. That's what drives us forward. Without it, we'd be nothing, just machines following orders. But we're not machines, we're human. And being human means embracing both the good and the bad, knowing that even in our darkest moments we can choose to rise. The chamber fell silent again, the weight of her declaration settling over everyone present. Then, unexpectedly, the orb shifted once more. This time, it displayed scenes not just of Earth, but of humanity's interactions with others. Diplomacy, collaboration, acts of kindness, even small gestures like offering food to strangers or sheltering those in need. These moments, insignificant on their own, painted a picture of a species defined not by its power, but by its heart. The leader of the Concorde stepped closer, its translucent form rippling with emotion, or something akin to it. You claim unity, yet you are divided. You claim wisdom, yet you stumble. You claim strength, yet you are fragile, and yet— It paused, tilting its elongated head, as if seeing humanity for the first time. And yet you endure, you adapt, you overcome. Eleanor met its gaze squarely, her resolve unwavering. That's who we are. Imperfect, yes, but determined. If you give us a chance, we'll prove it. For several long moments the leader said nothing. Then, slowly, it raised one crystalline hand toward the orb. The light dimmed, and the holographic displays vanished, leaving only the faint glow of the chamber. When it finally spoke, its voice carried a note of finality and respect. The test is complete, it announced. You have proven yourselves worthy. A collective sigh of relief swept through the human delegation, but Elena didn't relax, just yet. She knew better than to assume victory until the terms were clear. What happens now? She asked cautiously. You will be granted a place among the Concorde, the leader replied. Not as equals, not yet, but as allies. Your species will have access to our knowledge, our resources, and our protection. In return, you must uphold the principles of coexistence and contribute to the greater good. It was more than Elena had dared to hope for. Humanity wouldn't simply survive, it would thrive. But as she accepted the offer on behalf of her people, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger journey. Back aboard the Aurora, the crew erupted into cheers as news of their success spread. For the first time in weeks, laughter filled the corridors, mingling with tears of joy and relief. Yet amidst the celebration, Eleanor found herself standing alone on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. We did it, Marcus said, joining her quietly. Against all odds, we actually did it. Elena nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. Yeah, we did. But this isn't the end, Marcus. It's just the start. The galaxy's changed because of us, and now it's our responsibility to make sure that change is for the better. As she turned to face him, her expression softened. "I just hope we're ready." Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "If anyone's ready, it's us. We've got heart, Captain. That's something no amount of technology can replicate." Together, they watched as the Aurora prepared to leave the Nexus behind, its engines humming with newfound purpose. Ahead lay uncharted territories, untold challenges, and infinite possibilities. But for the first time, humanity wasn't facing them alone. The Aurora drifted away from the Nexus, its engines glowing softly against the backdrop of endless stars. For the first time since entering the Andromeda cluster, the ship wasn't surrounded by hostility or uncertainty. Instead, it was accompanied by a sense of cautious optimism, a fragile but undeniable hope that humanity's future might be brighter than anyone had dared to imagine. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, her hands resting lightly on the railing as she gazed out at the galaxy stretching before her. The journey had been long, grueling, and fraught with moments that tested not only her leadership, but also her faith in humanity itself. Yet here they were, alive, victorious, and ready to step into a new chapter of their story. "Captain?" Lieutenant Marcus Kane called from his station, breaking the silence. "We're receiving confirmation from the Concorde fleet. They're standing down." Elena nodded, though her expression remained thoughtful. "Good. Let's make sure we thank them properly. A gesture of goodwill goes a long way." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll appreciate diplomacy after everything?" "They might not understand it fully," Elena replied with a faint smile, "but I think they respect it now. That's progress." As the crew worked to secure their alliance with the Concorde, Elena allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She thought back to Earth, the blue-green orb she had fought so hard to represent, and wondered how its people would react when they learned what had transpired here. Would they rise to the occasion? Would they embrace this opportunity to grow, to learn, to contribute to something greater than themselves? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the doorframe. Lieutenant Sarah Chen stepped onto the bridge, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Despite the exhaustion etched into her face, there was a spark of determination in her eyes. "Captain," she began hesitantly, "what happens next? I mean, we've earned their trust, but what do we do with it?" Eleanor turned to face her, recognizing the weight behind the question. It wasn't just about logistics or strategy, it was about purpose. Humanity hadn't come this far simply to survive. They had come to thrive, to leave their mark on the universe. "We build," Eleanor said firmly. "Not just ships or technology, but relationships. We share what makes us unique, our art, our stories, our dreams. And in return we listen, we learn, we adapt." Sarah nodded slowly, processing her words. "It won't be easy, will it?" "No," Elena admitted. "But nothing worth doing ever is." Days passed as the Aurora traveled toward the edge of the Concorde's territory, escorted by a small contingent of alien vessels. Along the way, communication channels buzzed with activity. Diplomatic exchanges flowed between the humans and their newfound allies, each side cautiously probing the other's intentions while laying the groundwork for collaboration. For the Concorde, the experience had been transformative. They had entered the encounter expecting weakness and disunity, only to discover resilience, creativity, and heart. Their initial dismissal of humanity gave way to curiosity, then admiration, and finally respect. Even the most skeptical among them couldn't deny the impact these fragile beings had made, not through force, but through sheer willpower and compassion. Among the human crew, the mood shifted from relief to excitement. Conversations buzzed with ideas about what lay ahead, establishing embassies, sharing scientific breakthroughs, exploring uncharted star systems together. Each member of the team felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing they were part of something historic. On the final day of their journey, Elena gathered her crew in the observation lounge. Outside the massive window, the swirling colors of a nearby nebula painted the room in hues of gold and violet. As the crew settled into their seats, Elena took a deep breath, preparing to speak. "When we left Earth," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, We didn't know if we'd succeed. All we knew was that we had to try. For ourselves, for our planet, for everyone who believed in us. And now, here we are, standing on the brink of something incredible. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the faces of her team. Some were smiling, others holding back tears, but all shared a common bond forged through adversity and triumph. This isn't just our victory, she continued. It belongs to every person back home who dreamed of reaching the stars. To every child who looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. To every scientist, artist, teacher, and worker who contributed to making this mission possible. Humanity has always been defined by its ability to dream, and now those dreams have taken us farther than we ever imagined. The room erupted into applause, the sound echoing off the walls like a symphony of hope. But Elena wasn't finished yet. Raising a hand to quiet the cheers, she added one final thought. And remember this, no matter where we go or what we achieve, we carry Earth with us. Its beauty, its struggles, its potential, they're part of who we are, so let's honor that legacy. Let's show the galaxy what it means to be human. As the Aurora approached the border of the Milky Way, the crew gathered once more on the observation deck to watch as their home galaxy came into view. Against the vastness of space, it appeared small and fragile, a pale spiral suspended in darkness. Yet to the humans aboard the ship, it was everything. Marcus broke the silence with a wistful smile. You know, for a species that started out on a tiny rock, orbiting a mediocre star, we've done pretty well. Eleanor chuckled softly, her eyes never leaving the sight before her. Yeah, we have, but the best is yet to come. In that moment, as the Aurora bridged two galaxies, one familiar, one unknown, it became clear that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology, its courage, or even its resilience. It was its capacity to hope, to connect, and to believe in the possibility of something better. And so, under the watchful gaze of countless stars, humanity took its first step into a larger universe, not as conquerors or wanderers, but as dreamers, united by a shared vision of tomorrow. The galaxy laughed when humans sent one ship, someone whispered later, as the story spread across the cosmos. But then it arrived. This final section ties together the emotional and thematic threads of the story, offering closure while leaving room for future exploration. It celebrates humanity's achievements and emphasizes the importance of unity, empathy, and hope in shaping a brighter future.